Or isometrics, all your motor units are firing all at once. So if you're really trying to warm up, why not get the most activation out of your muscles? Isometrics, like a wall sit or the stretch contraction in a lengthened position, holding those would be great warm-ups, especially with articular rotations and joint movements. But yeah, man.
Welcome to the Functional Code, your go-to source for decoding optimal health. Join Dr. Addy and Dr. Jace as they break down the science behind pain, performance, longevity, and more, making complex concepts easy for you to understand and apply in your life. Your journey to a healthier you begins with understanding the Functional Code.
Welcome back to the Functional Code, everyone. Today we have Bulletproofing the MMA Fighter. We have a special guest today, Cory Brown, movement extraordinaire. We are glad to have him on the podcast today. This guy comes with a heck of knowledge on training, diet, and nutrition. He's got a huge background in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and we're extremely excited to have him here today. I am Dr. Addy.
And I'm Dr. Jace. We are looking forward to having Cory on the pod for some time now. In total transparency, this is round 2 for us due to technical difficulties. So it is what it is on that one. But either or, we're excited to have you back again. Now with Cory, it's been fun watching him grow, watching him learn as he's been a team member in our office here. But he's incredibly knowledgeable on so many facets in terms of nutrition, in terms of training, in different aspects of training that not many people are aware of. And then we're going to get into some of those specifics today. But Cory, I guess let's start with the background. How did things start up for you? And then where are you at right now?
Thanks for having me, first of all. That was a great intro.
Of course, man.
Yeah, I guess a little bit about me. I do work here at the clinic. Do have a background with sports. That's what sparked my interest in this whole working with the body and trying to help other people optimize their not only daily life, but lifestyle and sport and whatever it may be. So performance optimization, that's it. But yeah, I used to play football. That's where this all started. The seed was planted. I'd say I was like 5 or 6, pretty young, a wee lad. And I started playing football, flag football, until, I would say I was about 10 years old, the point where everybody started to sprout up and outgrow me. I'm a pretty small dude. So at that time, when I was pretty young, everybody started to get real big and take the playtime away from me. So I was sitting on the sideline more, and I felt, as a kid, that kind of sucks. You want to play the sport that you really love, and it's taken away from you to an extent. So I kind of sparked my jiu-jitsu martial arts interest. And one day I got a little discouraged from not playing in the football game. And my dad said, you know what? You need to compete with kids your own size. So I did. And from my first day of jiu-jitsu, I was hooked. And
So did your dad have a background in Jiu Jitsu too?
not jiu-jitsu. So he had a background in Tong Sudo. Very similar to Michael Venom Page.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, distance point fighter. Yeah.
How long did he do that for then?
Ooh, 10 years maybe?
Wow.
Yeah, this was back when karate was like very big, back in like the 90s.
Why didn't he want you to train how he trained?
He felt that jiu-jitsu for a smaller guy was a little bit better.
Nice.
Because the sport, say for more often than not, it's for a smaller guy defending himself against a bigger guy.
Sure.
It's using leverage. It's using technique over strength and power to overwhelm your opponent and control them. And that's why he wanted to put me in that sport, because I was so much smaller that he felt more comfortable putting me in a sport where I could defend myself against bigger people. Because I couldn't punch as hard. I wasn't as big and powerful as some of these other guys. He felt like jiu-jitsu or grappling would be the best bet. And so I'm glad he did, because
He did
let's
that.
hear.
You did that for how long?
Brazilian jiu-jitsu?
Yes.
I trained for 8 years. Yep. Yeah, it
And
was great.
Were we talking a couple days ago about you travel out of state just to compete/work with jiu-jitsu? I guess, how was that process from starting up and going through the ranks? And then what did that journey look like for you?
Yeah, so one of the big aspects of jiu-jitsu is competitions, right? You're always training for a competition, especially if you're in that scene and you want to get your name out there and you want people to recognize you for your skill and all that stuff. And that's what most people really want, because we'll touch on this a little later, but there's not as much money in the sport of jiu-jitsu. So it's all about legacy, right? Medals and what did you do during your time in competition? That's like the big thing in jiu-jitsu is competition. So going back to your question, as a kid, you're training every single day in class and you want to prove yourself to other people. So you go to competitions and you prove yourself against the best of the best, which gives you more and more opportunities, of course, the better you place. And that led me to out-of-state tournaments and traveling and coaching at certain gyms in Mississippi, Louisiana. I've been to Las Vegas, California, Georgia, competed all over. I went to Brazil, taught.
You were there at Brazil?
Yeah, I went to Brazil,
Awesome,
2015. Yeah.
Wow.
I was 15 years old by myself.
And
Went to
Cory
Rio de
won't
Janeiro.
say it, he's quite modest, but you have quite a trophy room of competition wins and even nationals, right?
Yeah, no.
Do you want to touch a little bit just on the achievement?
Sure,
I think you
yeah.
should, because what he was telling us is very impressive.
Yeah. Yeah, so the world's Jiu-Jitsu, I was a blue belt. I've won nationals multiple times. The kid, I've won Pan Ams, which is another big tournament. I went to Brazil. I won I forget which tournament it was. I want to say it was like Sao Paulo Open or something like that. But went there, took gold.
Right, man.
Sorry to flex, but
No, I think
but yeah, I
awesome.
think a lot of silver medals, a lot of bronze medals, but
a decorated career in a very short
Sure.
period. I mean, most people are still competing after many years too, but that's very impressive. And that's super cool that you did that so early on too. And you just probably took off from that sport and it just came naturally to you.
yeah, I think a lot of my so-called success with jiu-jitsu, especially as an adult, stemmed from me training so young.
Yeah.
Because I started training at 10, 11 years old, I was able to build up a lot of skill and mat time so that I was able to work up to then by the time I got to adult, I already had years of experience, more than some of these other adults I was competing with. So played in my favor a bit, but it's all about hard work.
Man, no, that's awesome. You killed it. And congrats from all your successes. And I know that that kind of mentality and effort has transferred into what you're doing today too.
Yeah.
Well, obviously we'll get to that. So Cory, obviously with this kind of competition and training, it's going to come points of time where I'm sure you've either overtrained or had some certain injuries. And
Sure.
Obviously with podcasts, we're always interested in talking about what are some ways that we can help others, especially if they have these kinds of injuries, or even I'm sure there's plenty of athletes out there who get these kinds of things. But with training, what were some of the common injuries that you saw in BJJ, and did you get an injury, and were there ever a time you needed to overcome it, and how did you train that? And
Yep.
just break that down.
Yeah, I've never had any what I would call severe injuries. I did break my clavicle. I broke growth plate in my big toe, which was actually worse than this. Surprisingly, it's terrible.
Yeah, that's a tough either.
But in terms of like soft tissue injuries or muscle, ligament tears, anything, I've never sustained anything like that, luckily. But I had witnessed people who have broken fingers, torn bicep, not good. Yeah, for sure. It's definitely more soft tissue, or I would say tendon, ligament, strain, sprain, muscle tears from too much load or tension on a joint. For instance, like an arm bar, there's so much pressure or tension on the elbow joint that the bicep, with resistance of that trading, you don't want to get put in that lock. There's too much tension that just pulls that insertion upwards and tears your bicep, which I've seen firsthand. It's not pretty.
With an arm bar, you're saying?
Yeah, with an
Or
arm bar.
something like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
A lot
Yeah.
of dislocations as well.
dislocations are big, yeah, for sure. Going back to that same point, when bigger joints like the shoulder and the knee, or the hip, I should say, when you're cranking on it and putting so much pressure, and then somebody tries to either rip your leg out or break free, there's times when that joint can just become so loose, pop out or sublux out. Not fun.
I can't imagine.
Yeah. I've seen people pop in their shoulder on the mat,
Yeah.
just go against the wall and jam it in.
That's real.
Got to do what you got to do, I guess, to stay on the mat. But
Makes sense. As you went through with some of your teammates or friends that you've noticed these injuries with that, how did they go about the healing process? Did they go see someone specifically? Did you or yourself go into any areas of rehab for specific injuries, and how that look?
yeah, so for me personally, I didn't have any like major soft tissue injuries, but I know for some light brains in my ankle or even my toe, I was using the cold laser. That's really good for joints that I noticed, especially for those who, let's say like bicep tear, I would say, I don't know, sling. I don't know if cast would be the best bet, but having sling, rest.
Yeah, that's going to be a more obviously severe.
More severe injuries. But yeah, for me, because mine were terrible, more so just rest, ice, heat, whatever required at the time. But
Does the gyms that you trained at have rehabilitative specialists?
the ones that I've trained at, no.
Okay. Because I know Tony Ferguson always talks about how he and his crew always rehabilitate themselves whenever they have an injury at the gym.
Yep.
And he was toting that he was going to be a DPT one day because of how much
Yeah.
he was able to, or he said he should be a doctor because of how much quicker he was getting better on some of the injuries that him and his crew were getting.
Yeah.
But I just didn't know if that was a concept or mindset that some of these gyms have, or was that kind of just a one?
Maybe some of them have adapted it. At least from my experience, I didn't really see that.
Yeah.
In the gym, they didn't really have people there in the gym watching over. But ironically, while I was training, there were a few chiropractors, few PTs that were there, anesthesiologists. So there's a lot of nurses and medical professionals that were there. So in case of injuries or some dislocation or something, we've had people there to monitor. But in terms of specialists that were there specifically for that reason, no, we didn't really have that.
Sure.
But
And a lot of this, why we're bringing up the injuries right away is if you have an injury, it's going to leave change to the tissue structure, which if you don't overcome that, oftentimes you're going to compromise or compensate above or below that area, which is why when bulletproofing any fighter, you got to look at past injuries and then what was the rehab process with that too. So as we're breaking down this whole process, that there's a reason for it. Obviously pay attention on that side of things, but I guess going back to rehab versus training, obviously those two coalesce with one another, but I guess what does typical training of an MMA differ from, and I know you participate in CrossFit and weightlifting, how does that training look in comparison to one another?
yeah. So the curriculum is very similar, I would say, honestly, from something like CrossFit to even going to the gym by yourself. You're gonna have your warm up. You got to spend some time getting the muscle warm, getting the joints loose, getting some fluid into your joints, so that way you can go in and you're already primed and ready to go, right? Similar to Jiu Jitsu. You're gonna go in, you're gonna do your warm up, break a sweat. That's fairly hot in there. Then you're gonna work on some technique. So whatever the technique is for the day, or whatever the muscle group is that you're working for the day, that's like the meat and potatoes of the session, right? 45-ish minutes are going to be spent drilling techniques, progressions, and all that stuff, right? Drilling the technique into your head you can learn. And then at the end of class, the remaining time is live rolling. So that's going to be, let's say, your CrossFit WOD or the long, high intense workout. That's going to be your training, your live rolling. So that's where diamonds are made under pressure. You figure out who's...
Now you're sparring.
Now you're sparring, exactly. That's when things get a little heated, the tensions rise, and you're actually trying to submit your opponent. Yeah.
So with that, is there certain times that you roll for, like continuously, or do you go to submission, or what does that look like, training versus competition, and how long are rounds typically?
Yeah. So for training, rounds differ by gym or by day. Some gyms do 10-minute rounds, which is pretty long. We would do anywhere between, typical roll, 4 to 8 minutes usually per roll, because you want to get enough volume. You want to train with enough people. But for competition, there's so many different ways to vary your training. You can do 2 to 3 minute short rounds and then just go quick. So every 2-3 minutes, a new person's coming in, like King of the Hill type deal. So where your cardio's put to the test, your technique is put to the test under pressure, all that stuff. But in terms of training for competition, I'd say it's very position focused. So in competition, you want to be ready for every position that you may be put in or encounter. So spending as much time as you can in training or in practice, in theory, will benefit you in the long run more in competition, right? Because you've spent more time in those positions. For example, let's say I'm having issue with people taking my back and choking me out in practice. So leading up to a competition, I'm going to spend more and more time with people on my back.
Technique-wise.
So maybe we start a 3-minute, 5-minute round with you already on my back.
Scenarios.
Exactly.
Right.
So I'm forced to work out of this position, right? So
Now, would you say the reason why you were so successful was just because of the mindset your gym had on training those kinds of ways? Or what other ways do you feel they were just better at training their fighters? Sure.
I guess, let me take this back a little bit, move back. So when I first started training, the gym that I was at I was a child. So I started when I was 10.
Yeah.
Up until I was 16, I was technically in the kid ranks. So a little bit different. I worked with different coaches who were a little more, I think, kid-friendly, until I transitioned into an adult where I actually switched gyms and I started training with Augusto Mendez Taquino, who was a world champion. And that's when the training ramped up. So then, I guess going back to your question, training with a guy like that who had experience at the top level, who had beaten the best of the best multiple times in the biggest tournaments, taking that experience and bringing it into the gym, especially for young guys like me and the rest of the squad, was very helpful because he was very, professional, but also stern, but also knew what he was talking about. And the proof is in the pudding because he'd been there, done that. So we do a lot of positional rolling, very intense warm-ups. You make sure you guys are ready to go.
Yeah.
A lot of live rolling. So again, more time under tension. The more volume of training that you can get, the better off or prepared you're going to be moving forward into competition. So if you're spending a lot of positional rolls, a lot of time rolling, even longer rounds to build the cardiovascular system and get you ready to go.
Was it, okay, that gentleman, Augusto Menez?
So Mendes, as a Brazilian, no. And then his nickname is Tanquinho, which is Inho is little, and then Tanque is tank. So Tanquinho is little tank. And his brother is big tank.
Right.
Let's use Tanquinho. So what was his biggest lesson that you learned to train under him? And was there an instance or a memory that brought out that lesson that you can remember?
Oh, that's a good question. Oh, man. I wouldn't say there's one particular thing. I learned so much from him. Outside of, I would say, the strictly jiu-jitsu, he definitely taught us how to be respectful, how to be humble in both victory and defeat, and in training even. How to respect those above you, how to respect those below you, how to be proper, timely, how to look prepared, how to prepare. He taught me kind of all those lessons. And win, lose, draw, you're going to shake the opponent's hand and you're going to shake the referee's hand and you're going to move past them.
The mentality of a winner.
That's it. And that's why I think he was so sharp, so good, is because
It's cool you brought that up compared to like training.
Yeah. I mean, in training,
that's it. But it's interesting how that was the first thing that came out of your mouth, right? I mean, you talk about, I know we being guys who at least watch the sport, understand the sport, but those who don't, the art of martial art, people don't understand kind of lessons that you get taught when it comes to that kind of.
Sure.
And so even just for those watching, do you just want to explain that a little bit too? Just how much they drive home into you, teaching you how to be a good human being, let alone a warrior.
100%.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's one of the big things that they instill in you, I would say right away, is it is called the gentle art. That's what jiu-jitsu translates to, is gentle art. You're not going out there to hurt your opponent. To an extent, you might if you're in a professional setting, but the lessons from jiu-jitsu aren't necessarily stemming from technique in itself, but more so how to respect your opponent. Let me put it this way. It's a metaphor for life, right? How to be respectful, how to show up on time, how to be prepared, how to do what you're going to say you're going to do, how to show respect to others, even in times of defeat.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's just so many things that I learned from the sport, and specifically Tanquinho, that I just love, and I'm going to cherish that dude forever.
Yeah.
He's been there for me, and he's stood in my corner, and after winning Pan Ams, gave me the biggest hug, and never forget that. Yeah. I feel blessed that I had him in my corner, for sure.
And I think that's so important. So many high-end level athletes, when we ask them, or when you find out the certain lessons that they've learned from either the people they've trained from or lessons along their journey, I feel like all of them come towards like lessons of life, and they combine the two together. So, I mean, it's big truth, exactly what Cory said on that one. But let's dive into building up the training. And I know there's a belt system. So especially for jiu-jitsu, a lot of people at home that might not know of MMA or the martial arts, could you walk us through what does that belt system look like? And does it differ from any other martial arts?
Sure. So I would say, I'll preface this, jiu-jitsu is one of the hardest, if not the hardest belt system to progress through, simply because it's a little more result driven, right? The more you show up, the more you compete, the more that you're showing face and training, the more you're going to progress. It's not like some of the other forms of martial art where if you just show up to class one day, they're going to give you a new belt like every time you show up. So definitely a lot harder. You do start at white belt, but separated by kid ranks and adult ranks. As a kid, you can't even get your black belt until you're an adult. So you have to work up to the kid ranks before you even start the adult ranks. So that's the boat that I fell into, where I had to progress all the way from white belt to green belt as a child. And then from green belt, I then got my blue belt with 6-7 years already under my belt. No pun intended, right? So started as a white belt, about 10 years old, worked up to a yellow belt, an orange belt. And then I was one of the few that got a green belt, which was pretty cool. From there, I turned 16. So then I got my blue belt. So never got farther than that because of life happened. But yes, very competition driven. So let's say you're at a gym like mine where it's a lot about competition, and they value competition a lot. So those who competed tended to progress a little quicker because you're showing effort in competition. You want to get your name out there. Whether you win, lose, or draw, you're competing. You're working towards a goal.
So with the belt system, because I know we brought this up last time, like working all the way up to black belt, and then you get stripes. And then there's a one that very few people ever have gotten. What is that?
Let me expand a little bit on the question before. So from blue belt, you go to purple belt. From purple belt, you go to brown belt. From brown belt, you go to black belt. So in between, though, you do have stripes. So that's where up to 4 stripes on your belt. After that, you get a new belt. So that's just progress shown. So whether it's you're showing up every single day to class and you're working as hard as you can and you're showing progress, or you just went out and you did fairly well at a local, you're going to get a stripe to show progression, or kind of like stars on a football helmet or something that they give, just little tally marks to progress you forward until you get to 4 stripes, and then you get your new belt. So then as a black belt, obviously there's no real belt higher than a black belt. So you get 4 stripes on your black belt, you're just a 4th degree black belt. You get another, you're a 5th degree black belt, so on and so forth, until you're what they call a red belt or a coral belt, which there's very few of those.
Which is just so many stripes to make it look like a coral snake.
That's it, man.
Which is cool.
Yeah,
I think that'd be really cool.
OG, you've spent your whole life on the mat, basically. And
Yeah.
some of the Gracies and Megaton Diaz, Mackenzie Dern's father, he's a coral belt. So pretty crazy feat.
From a respectable standpoint, question, is there a way that you could just buy a coral belt?
I don't even, honestly, I don't even know. But if I did that, they wouldn't even take me serious. They would completely understand it. Total joke. You almost have to have gray hair to have the coral belt. You got to be seasoned. But
So when you moved through the belt system, how would you say training progressed, and what do you feel built the ultimate Brazilian Jiu Jitsu competitor, and maybe comparative to a lesser opponent?
Question. Yeah. So I was training with the kids for majority of my training or time with sport.
Yeah.
But as I progressed and got really good in the kids class, even higher belts, I was starting to admit in class or get the better of in class. So then my coaches, my instructors started having me do the adult classes, even as a kid. So I was yellow belt when I was doing adult classes. So yellow, orange,
so always
belt,
finding a better opponent, right?
always finding a better opponent.
Yeah.
And that's pretty universal for anybody who wants to do jiu-jitsu or martial arts. Always find somebody that's better than you to train with.
Yeah.
If you're the biggest shark in the pond, biggest fish in the pond, like you can't.
You lose your thirst for hunger.
Exactly. It almost takes that little bit of losing or loss or defeat to light the fire in you to, then progress.
Yeah. We talk about that all the time on the pod, obviously.
Yeah.
Failure to learn, right? And
that's it.
That's so with training, obviously more fundamentals right away in the early stages of your competition. They obviously want to get. Do you continue to build on fundamentals all the time?
Always.
Or is
Always.
So you're polishing those skills all the time.
Always.
But is there a point in time where you felt training really changed when you got better and better?
Yeah, I feel like that was when I switched to Augusto Mendez. Yeah. That transition from kid to adult was really big, and I feel like it was really good for me because it turned me into that little immature kid who would go out and just go wild to now a very technical fighter. Thought-provoking process. And I think that's where the world championship mentality from Augusto Mendez or Taquinho really shined through with his students, is his ability to push them both in training, competition, all that stuff, right? To do better. I don't know, man. Taquinho was great. He was awesome to have.
Well, I know you talked about it last time too. You said one of the ways that you felt your gym, or at least your trainer, was more of an expert on was putting you in those scenarios, in each scenario or technique, I guess, guard, anything, and training every single one of those ways, and making sure that there was no stone left unturned, that you were prepared in every single setting or technique that you could get yourself into. And that's what you feel separates the greatest in the world from even the lesser than, is, it doesn't matter where on the body they get you know how to get out of it, or you know how to maybe counter in those kinds of ways.
Yeah. And one of the best, if not the best, no-gi jiu-jitsu fighter of all time is Gordon Ryan.
Yeah.
Still compete. He's very young, which is crazy that he solidified himself as a GOAT already. And he's pretty young. But what he does in his training specifically is positional training. He'll break apart a movement into its smaller components and then maximize each one of those components. So let's say he keeps getting caught in a certain position. So he'll just train that certain position over and over and over and over and over and over
Just let him keep
until
coming at it.
almost never happens again.
Yeah.
And then he'll move on to the next one and the next one and the next one. And then he puts it all together, and then he's just one of the best.
Train for the worst. I mean, just continue to train for the word.
Exactly.
Like you're always down for the count.
That's it.
And that's
So-
where most sports absolutely needs to break down that. That's how you think of any
Yeah.
high-end level athlete in any sport,
Yep.
where the best situations that you can maximize and master
Yeah.
for them moving forward. But
Yes.
that's a cool lesson.
And even what we do in clinic, it's the same thing, relating it back to jiu-jitsu. We take bigger movements, break them down into the smaller components, and then try to get people to maximize on those so that they can move better, look better, and all that stuff. So I think it's pretty interesting how translatable it is.
Well,
Pretty cool.
for my junior year in high school, our top our called varsity was undefeated for almost the year, and our team was undefeated as well because we would push each other. We were so good, but we always trained 2-minute drills. That's all we would do.
Yeah.
And it was, we're down by 8 with 2 minutes to go. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
And we did that constantly. We're down, and it just polished our game.
Yep.
Because we were just so strategic, and we made sure that, because every second counted, we were down. And I think obviously that's the way to train. You got to train like you're behind. You can't get, like you said, humble. You always got to be humble and have that mentality.
Yeah. So expand on that too. When you go to competition, you see it a lot now. There's a lot of point fighters where it's very much a sport jiu-jitsu, where you'll sit down, you pull guard, play the points game, maybe get a sweep, end up on top, and then the match is over and you win by a couple points. And oh, I am a world champion. We were never taught that. And that's why Gordon Ryan is so good, because he goes out headhunting. He goes out for the submission. That's what jiu-jitsu is submitting your opponent. Control them, and you ideally submit them, right? So in training with Augusto Mendez, like you're saying, what are you going to do? You're going to lose this match if you don't make something happen.
Yeah.
So,
now look for opportunities.
Look
Maybe
for
be a little more aggressive, obviously, at
Sure.
times, not against you.
That's it. So training for submission in practice and not training for points. We didn't keep points at all ever in training, So while we're doing rolls, somebody can sweep me and get them out, but we're not. There's a couple points here. We don't care. We're going for the submission only.
Was there a submission that you shot for a lot, or you felt you were really good at hitting?
Dude, bow and arrow choke.
Bow and arrow.
Yeah.
For those listening at home, with jiu-jitsu, there's both gi, the uniform that you wear with the belt, and then no gi as well, where you don't wear that. Regular clothes, street clothes, if you will. So in the gi, that's primarily what I trained. The bow and arrow choke is a choke from the back. I'm sure most people are familiar with your basic rear naked choke. Squeeze, and that's that. The bow and arrow choke, I guess, for example, if I'm on your back and I use your collar cross here, I'm using your lapel or your collar to choke you. So I'm just squeezing against like a bow
When you're bringing the bow
exactly.
back.
So
That's interesting.
yep. So I'll be grabbing your pants and I'm
Smart.
pulling this way.
Interesting. So you use the
Bow and arrow.
opponent's apparel,
Sure.
uniform, whatever you
Yep.
call it,
Dude,
actually choke off the throat.
that was smart.
I didn't think you could.
If you guys are wearing a hoodie and you see me up, what's your next?
It's awesome.
So did you learn certain submissions here in America versus when you went to Brazil? Because I know.
Yeah.
And how was that level? And was there anything different there versus here?
Yes. Man, that was an experience of a lifetime for sure. So I don't know how I could put it. So in America, we're very comfortable with what we have. We walk in, we got air conditioning and locks on the doors, and it's great. Competition is, some people show up, some people don't. When I was in Brazil, there's bars on the doors, and it's a lot different of an environment.
Sure.
But there were hundreds of people on the mat in, I would say, half the size of what we had here. Every single day, every class, these people were there. They didn't have air conditioning. They didn't have special equipment. They just had a mat with maybe a speaker in the back and one toilet that everybody would have to share. But that's why they're so good, because they We'll touch on Khabib in a little bit. Going back to like with Khabib, he's creating an army. They don't have all this special stuff. It's just hard work, dedication, blood, sweat, tears, and sacrifice.
Yeah.
And in Brazil, that's really soccer and jiu-jitsu. That's all they have to prioritize, right? The gym was a lot more, I would say, prideful in the martial art. They train a lot harder than what you would see here.
Interesting.
You know, and that's why I would say that a lot of the Brazilians in the competition scene, they're always going to take over because their mindset and lifestyle is so different than what we see here in America.
Is there different moves that they use or submissions compared to here, or does everyone know that all the submissions? And
for the most part, yeah, I would say it's just the style of training. You know, how hard they train in their environment.
Okay,
that would be the biggest thing.
BJJ versus American trained jiu-jitsu.
Sure,
not too many differences, or do you find to be some technique?
Yeah, that's starting to be a big topic of discussion. Is Brazilian jiu-jitsu versus now like American grappling,
right?
You know, divide, and then Craig Jones calls it like what, Mexican street karate or something. So yeah, there's a lot of different variations. It's all the same deal. Everybody knows most of the same techniques and all that stuff. And obviously there's new innovation and new techniques constantly being formed, but for the most part, pretty universal. Most people know the same techniques and moves. It's just different variations. And
did you train? I know there's a lot more than just BJJ as far as the martial arts techniques or styles of training. I know we'll get to Khabib in a little bit, but he trained Sambo and he trained some other techniques too. Did you get any other training too, or any other types of arts to blend into your style, or was it strictly BJJ?
Yeah, there's a few complementary martial arts like wrestling and judo that play swimmingly into the jiu-jitsu game. So every fight is going to start on the feet, regardless. Any competition, you're going to start on the feet. So having some kind of wrestling, judo background is going to really serve you useful. So having a wrestling background, for instance, you're really good at controlling your body and body awareness, very high level, I would say. So having a background in wrestling is very useful and translatable into jiu-jitsu, same with judo. Me personally, I didn't have too much experience with either of those, although I did spend a little bit of time doing wrestling. But I was a lot smaller, so I didn't prioritize my takedowns as much as I did. I started off as more of a guard player until I got a little better on the feet, and then I started playing top a little more, especially with Dickie.
That's what Gordon does. Gordon just lays down and just let them come to him. And
that's it.
He just takes.
He's almost a baiter. He'll bait you.
Like a little snake.
That's it. Yeah.
Come on in there. Strike, right?
But yeah, having a background in one of those definitely plays useful. You know, for sure.
So I want to stay on this training for a little bit, and then let's go into a couple other things on how you can train different like muscle fiber types and different things. And I know when we brought up this Bulletproof series, I wanted to touch on training the squeeze, and then I definitely want to pick your brain, Doc Cory, of different systems and how to train those. But when going to train the squeeze, especially when you're almost locking out someone, and I know there's limitations, especially if the person that is locking you out has full control of all the whole body. But with injuries and going back to train the squeeze, as you're locking someone out, even doing isometric contractions in the position where you would be locked out can limit injury from getting worse. But obviously, if that sustains, those tissues can only last for a set period of time. So working in your training regimen, especially if you're an MMA martial artist, what are specific takedowns that you use? And is there ways that you can train the squeeze of not only your legs or arms in certain positions? So certain things to pay attention for. So Cory, have you worked with training the squeeze, if we will, or how does that look like in your eyes versus training all these other specific systems in terms of power, aerobic conditioning, hypertrophy? Like, how does that blend with one another?
Yeah, for you, I feel like that's a variable that not many people are even really aware of, is like the controlling the squeeze and getting more comfortable in that extended stretch position to strengthen the joints and have your brain actually make the connection to that area to get stronger. So yeah, we got to spend more time in those positions, especially with isometric holds, especially with submissions. I don't know about hypertrophy with jiu-jitsu. That's very highly intense. You're burning a lot. It's not so much muscle building, but it's a lot of real explosive movements, I would really say both types of muscle fibers, type 1, type 2, are going to be utilized. If anything, type 2X, because it's a little bit of both, 2A. But good question. So if the longer the rounds, obviously the more endurance, fat burning, I would say you're going to be using. So working your cardio is going to be really important, right?
How did you work cardio?
That's where endurance stuff, a lot of training, a lot of volume of training, assault bike, not the most fun, rowers, just endurance stuff.
Yeah, very all that.
But I will say it's very different. Jiu-Jitsu or martial arts, cardio in general, is highly different than just going and running a marathon. It's way more intense, or even doing a HIIT workout. It's very different. But yeah, what I would do, train a lot of power movements, box jumps, and kettlebell swings, explosive snatches, or stuff like that to really work the explosive movements. And then I would say most of the longer form, more, I would say, fat burning endurance type of stuff was done, with the rolling, longer rounds, longer assault bike sessions, longer rowing sessions, the CrossFit workouts, all that stuff.
And you're always training like what, 3-4 times the round length so that you're prepared. Is that kind of how that works?
Yeah, typically.
And I know with UFC, it's 3-minute rounds for most, unless you're in a main event.
Yeah.
Do MMA fighters train like 15, 20-minute rounds, or what's the times X the round to try to make sure you have the cardio available?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a specific protocol.
Okay.
I do think it's just more volume.
More volume.
Like, let's say you're doing 3-minute rounds. That doesn't sound like too much, but you're going pretty hard.
Oh,
and if you do 10 of those rounds,
you're gassed.
you're gassed.
Even a minute and a half most for guys.
Yeah,
it's so tough to train. Even the best in the world don't have that much cardio to stay in those rounds because that's just crazy. People that have never done, I have never done it, but I bet you rolling for a minute for those who've never rolled before, you're going to
100%
just done.
Well, for example, if somebody wants to try this at home, or have a sibling or somebody that's willing to try this, then go ahead. So have somebody just lay on your back, put all their weight on top of you, and then say, ready, set, go. And you try to get them off and escape and see how quick you pass out. It's tough.
Yeah.
Especially when somebody has their whole weight on you, trying to do everything you can to go escape, and you just can't. Not only is it frustrating, but you can't breathe, and you're gassed out. And what's
interesting is a lot of these MMA fighters are jacked. It's interesting you brought up the hypertrophy, because a lot of them they're big. Look at like Yoel Romero. I got to understand he's got to do some or is he just that genetically fit? I don't know. But did you ever do 3-4 times a week weight training? Is that something that you guys even do or not really?
Me personally, yeah.
Okay.
Going back, I was so small that I had to put on some size.
Okay.
That's where Triple talked about the CrossFit and a lot of the weightlifting I did outside of the gym, boot camps, that would supplement with my jiu-jitsu.
Sure.
So that really helped. But even going to the boot camp stuff and the CrossFit stuff, it was all high intensity stuff. So all to benefit my rolling.
So the circuit training probably gave you hypertrophy.
To an extent.
Yeah. Right.
Now we weren't training, it wasn't like 8-12 reps per se, or whatever the ideal rep range is. More like 1 minute, 1 minute, go. We're going to give you 15-30 seconds rest, and then on to the next station, and then on to the next, and then on to the next. Or intervals, man, it's tough, but
the best though.
It's real good for improving the other.
Bruce Lee was one of the first to utilize that. People didn't realize that, but he would do 12 circuit training, like with 12 different things that he'd do. And one of them, I know you talked on isometric. He had this chain that was connected to like handlebars, and one of his circuits would be pulling the handlebar as hard as he could for a minute. And that would be one of his, and he talked isometrics in his book. If you've ever read his book, he utilized isometrics a lot. Now, I don't know science-wise if we still know that was like a huge portion of why he was so quick, but he felt the isometrics was a very important movement in how he trained.
Yeah, isometrics are a great warm-up.
Right.
Honestly, better than some of the stuff in the gym or that I see in the gym nowadays. People are doing some weird stuff. Hit some isometrics.
What are they doing? I'm curious. What do you mean by that?
I mean, for example, some of these baseball coaches are doing some of the weirdest pitching drills ever that isn't even translatable into pitching. I'm like, what are you doing? You're wasting more energy setting up this drill than you are actually pitching.
Do you have an example? Is there an easy way to explain it?
So I guess in my gym, some of the hip exercises that people do, especially with bands, aren't that effective in warming up your muscle.
Gotcha.
In fact, those people who do the little side steps with the bands, you're just creating tension, and then you're releasing that tension, and then you're releasing the tension, and then you're gaining the tension. It's just like a constant up and down. Or isometrics, all your motor units are firing all at once. So if you're really trying to warm up why not get the most activation out of your muscles? Isometrics, like a wall sit or the stretch contraction in a lengthened position, holding those would be great warm-ups, especially with articular rotations and joint movements. But yeah, man, so many exercises or static stretching for a long period of time before your heavy lifts.
We still got to work on that, because I don't know how many times we're still training or teaching people about static stretching.
Yeah. There's a time and a place, but that's more on like the off day when you're going body maintenance for longer stretches versus going, like you said, explosive movements. And I like to touch on this point too that Cory brought up. Like when training for the warm up, he brought up circles of the joints, moving through the biggest range of motion possible. He brought up increasing the intensity so you can drive that nervous system to the motor units, so you can activate those tissues to prepare you for the activity, that high-end bout of intensity, and being specific like that. That's something that, like, when I assess practitioners, when I assess other clinics, like, what's the mental thought process of either rehab or training people, and just even that mindset it's smart, because it trains in the way of how the nervous system communicates to the body and body back to the brain. Mad kudos to you on that one.
Yeah.
You got to start training people, man.
Yeah.
Right. I know we'll get to some of the things you got coming up.
Yeah.
I think this would be a good niche to even start on with getting some help.
Yeah, there's a big gap, I would say, in that literature in terms of articular rotations, trying to get the maximum joint rotation with the combination of stretch contractions. But again, we'll probably touch on that in a little bit.
Kairos, I don't know if you remember this, but there was a big BJJ gym next door to Northwestern in Minneapolis, or by Minneapolis, where both Dr. Jace and I went to school. And I don't know how many of my chiropractic friends did BJJ. Again, training the way that they trained really helped reflexes and just the adjust. It really did. But I think almost all of them got injured. And again, I can't understand just the prevention aspect of it. If you're going to do this, and that is something that's going to come up, how do you prepare for that? Like, how do you really make sure that doesn't happen? I don't know if you can. It's just such a contact sport, but I don't know. I'd also be curious on if you could develop a way for that to happen too, because I think you could give it a good run.
Yeah. In terms of prevention? Yeah, for sure. I think having the knowledge, first of all, is going to be key. If you don't know how to do it, then it's going to be tough. Yeah, preventing the injuries, strengthening the joints, especially with jiu-jitsu, because everything is joint related. Everything is with a joint, right? Every lock, other than a choke, if you will, has to do with joints. So strengthening the joints and the muscles surrounding it, definitely going to serve you beneficial. I've seen it firsthand with physical therapists and chiropractors at my old gym. They would always say, busted athletes repaired daily. That was their slogan, because they would go in and all these guys would have crazy injuries, like you said. And he's like, man, what are you doing to prevent all this stuff? You train and beat yourself up over and over, and then one quick adjustment.
Next thing you know, you're Tony Ferguson, who every part of his body is beaten up right now. And
Team Margala,
you can't compete. I feel bad, because he was one of the greatest.
Yeah. And we see a lot. One injury. Oh, after I tore my ACL, it was after that I wasn't the same. Right. Or man, once I broke my arm, then I was never the same.
Yeah.
So that's where rehab becomes very important, or prehab as we call it. Preventing the injury before it happens becomes so much more important, so you can deal with that before it ever becomes something serious. And
well, if you're going to try to compete, not having 100% capacity back to that part of the body, even if at 95%, you're going to be a top world competitor. That 5% extra is going to give you nice difference too.
Yeah. A side note here, I know a lot of people right now, myself included, I'm not too fond of Conor McGregor pulling out of his fight for a broken toe. But small broken toe, it could mean world difference.
For sure.
Pereira broke his toe in the fight yesterday.
Yeah, he popped it back in, or he was touching it after it
and snapped it back in.
Especially for feet injuries or hand or wrist too.
Yeah.
Everything is with either grip or like moving in different positions. So I can see why, like going back to the injury that you had with your broken toe. How long did that take for you to heal from that?
Yeah. I can't remember. I want to say 8 weeks, because I did break the growth plate. So it was a little bit more extensive.
They just cast it? No.
So when I initially broke it, it did suck. I went to PT thinking I was going to get a flat little shoe. No, I got a whole boot for my big toe, because it was my growth plate, and they didn't want any long-term damage because I hadn't wasn't done growing yet.
Mhm.
Thank God. But yeah, because I broke the growth plate, they couldn't really do much other than to just let it heal and support it as much as possible. So I actually started, I believe it was like sophomore year of high school with a boot. First day of school, I'm walking in with a boot. Oh, what happened? You break your leg? Nah, I broke my toe. Yeah.
So Cory, let's say you have a person in front of you who wants to become a beast of an MMA fighter. And what would you say would be maybe 5 different ways that you could give them some information or advice on becoming the next best BJJ or MMA fighter? What would you put as far as schedule or just trying to make changes to making them become a better fighter?
Yeah. I feel like training in the gym, Jiu Jitsu, is going to be number one, right? If you're, no matter what it is, Jiu Jitsu or what, the more time you spend doing it, the better you're going to get. That's just how it goes. But then to supplement your training in the gym, your nutrition is going to have to be on point. A lot of proteins and a lot of carbs, for sure. You're eating for performance and not eating to satisfy, right? So like that. Supplementing your training with good nutrition. On top of that, you got to have good cardiovascular system, good endurance, but also good fast twitch reaction times. So on your question, not only rolling, but supplementing it with weightlifting, with longer endurance exercises like running, biking, rowing. The ski erg is really good with the ski.
Is that the one you go?
Yeah, the ski erg. Yep. So really good.
Explosive movement.
Explosive movements. And then also, the power, like box jumps, kettlebell swings, snatches, clean and jerk, ball slams, a lot of that stuff. And then a lot of core exercises are going to be really important as well. You got to have a good core, got to have a strong base, good posture, all that stuff. So if I were to program a few things, it'd definitely be multiple times a day. Jiu-Jitsu. One, maybe just a normal class. Second, more positional rolling.
Yeah.
So it's not as fatiguing, you could say. One lighter, one heavier session. Supplementing in between with weightlifting. Maybe a rest day here or there. A lot of water, a lot of electrolytes. All the good stuff. But because you're beating your body up so much, you're going to have chiropractic, physical therapy. You're going to have to do massage. You're going to have to do saunas, cold plunges for recovery, compression boot, massage gun. The list goes on in terms of recovery devices, but these are really key in terms of longevity in any sport that you do, right? Or especially injury prevention and performance optimization and all that stuff.
That was beautiful, by the way.
That's it.
No, that was good.
So are there any top level athletes that you watch or monitor? And what is the training that you know of? And I know, Doc, there's something that you prepared. I want you to dive into that too. But who do you look at in terms of the top, not only jiu-jitsu, but top fighters in the world or ever?
Definitely Khabib and Magomedov. That dude, I look up to him so much. He was just so dominant in MMA. And he used a lot of grappling. That's why people got so flustered with him. You might have land a couple punches on the feet, but then he takes you down and it's almost game over like that. You just don't stand a chance. And his dominance is, I guess, motivating because of how he can control people on the ground, no matter what they're doing. They don't even stand a chance.
I feel like he just grappled 24/7. Like, how did he get so good?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
The debate still to this day is Sambo versus Jiu-Jitsu, both grappling. But then the Sambo guys say that it's better than Jiu-Jitsu. And the Jiu-Jitsu guys say, nah,
Sambo, for people that don't know at home.
Very similar. I'm not 100% sure. I think it's more about control. And it's a little bit of a mixture of wrestling and Jiu-Jitsu. But again, I'm not 100% sure exactly what Sambo is. We don't really practice Sambo in the U.S. quite as much, but very big over there.
Is it more on the feet or more on the ground?
Combination.
Okay.
It's a combination. But I would say on the ground.
Yeah.
More. I think that's why Khabib shined so much in MMA. Is because nobody really.
But he trained more Sambo?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, the Dagestani, they train a lot of Sambo.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah, Sambo is a lot of it.
I have Khabib's day-to-day schedule here, and it's, from my perspective, one of the freakiest frickin' schedules, man. This guy trained hard every day. It makes sense that the Dagestani fighters are always competitors when it comes to MMA, but Khabib's day-to-day, he'd wake up at 6. He'd do prayers and meditation right away. Kobe did the same thing. Obviously talked about how important that was to start your day off. 7 a.m., he'd start right away at long distance running for maybe 5 to 10 miles. 8:30, do breakfast, mostly just protein, fruit, vegetables, eggs, oatmeal. 10 a.m. hit. He did 2 hours of warm-up and drills as far as wrestling and grappling. 12 a.m. or 12 p.m. hit. He'd do a cool down with some light stretching, foam rolling, maybe even an ice bath. He'd have lunch, again, lean meats, veggies, carbs. 2 p.m. hits. He did another 2 hours of functional strength training. You talked about this a lot, Corey, obviously. Kettlebell swings, deadlifts, squats, bench press, box jumps, medicine ball throws. He did it all. Again, that's another 2 hours. Then at 4, he did another hour and a half of drilling where he'd do combos, striking, defense, grappling, just worked on the mat, improving all of his accuracy and speed. And it's crazy too, because they're not just training grappling, they got to train striking. They train a whole nother ball, which just makes it more impressive, some of these fighters. 5:30, he did recovery again, hydration and nutrition, massage, maybe some other treatments, and then he'd do a shake. 7 p.m., he was back on the mat for an hour and a half. He sparred, full spar contact, 7 p.m. He would do some strategy too. He'd review fight footage, discuss tactics. 8:30 hit, he'd do some light stretching for half an hour. Then he had a 9 p.m. dinner, which again, more just proteins, fat, carbs. And then he'd end 10 p.m. with prayers, relaxation, time with family. And then he'd try to get 8 hours of sleep. And every single day, dog is sound, man.
I really want to break this down from a broad scope, because that's fascinating. Like when you wake up, he starts with warming up his system, getting blood flow to the tissues. That's the cardio. Then he goes into breakfast, fueling the body to recover from the run and or to get the body moving. Then he goes in the first set of grappling, recover from that food, pretty much for have the body kind of replenish.
Yep.
Then he goes in the strength training, different aspect of training.
Yep.
And then, of course, technique, another bout of rolling, recovery, and then goes then. So every time he has a training session, he goes working out the tissues, muscle, recovery, food, workout, recovery, food. So it's a never-ending cycle. I think that's probably also why he does really well in terms of if he gets knocked down in a competition, he's able to quickly bounce back quicker. But I guess
he trains that way in a way.
Yeah,
that's cool. I like that you brought that. I didn't even realize that. That makes sense too.
So, Corey, what's your perspective on this? And I know we watched Khabib and some training videos. If you'd want to share some of that.
Yeah.
Talking about the pond too.
So, Khabib he's so elite for this reason. Every day in, day out, it doesn't matter. He's doing this stuff. But going back to what I was saying earlier, he's got his warm-up. He's going to warm up his system, and then he's going to do the meat and potatoes. He's going to do his workout, whatever it is, and then he's going to chill, recover, and then do it all over again. It's just that cycle, right? And now his pupil, Islam Makhachev, same thing. They do the exact same thing. He eats, he sleeps, he trains. He eats, he sleeps, he trains. That's it. That's all they do. And it's showing here. And the proof is in the pudding.
And dog is down to high altitude, right?
High altitude.
By the mountains.
Yeah.
So I know that's a large part of the cardio.
Fairly cold.
Yeah.
I don't know the region too much, but I know from the rise of all the Dagestani fighters is they're like an army. All they do is eat, sleep, train hard, and recover. Saunas, the lakes, the cold frozen lakes that they're jumping into, right?
Life
may seem a little crazy to us, but it shows when they step into the octagon. They're so dominant.
He's just putting them in such a survival method of just, it's time. This is it. Like,
it's almost like extremely high stressful situations.
Yeah.
But he's getting them the most comfortable for those extremely high stress situations.
Islam is number one pound fighter right now, right? Yeah, that makes sense. Khabib's that's still just crazy to think. Then you have Khabib number one all time, and then now his pupil's number one.
I don't know what
is he doing over there?
I don't know what the exact statistics are. Don't hold me on this, but arguably one of the best coaches ever already.
Really?
He only has, I want to, less than 10 losses ever as a coach.
Wow.
Out of however many students
he
has in the UFC.
And his dad coached him, right?
Yeah, his dad was top dog.
Yeah.
His gym is named after his dad.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Did his dad train? Is he?
I think so.
He was
I think his dad. I want to say Sambo, but I don't know.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, I remember watching the video of Khabib rolling with a little bear cub when he was.
Yeah.
I mean, that video alone, it was just like wrestling bears as a 8-year-old. Like,
that's wild.
Crazy.
That's crazy.
And he's what, 29-0?
29-0. What do you get tired at?
Coaching. So he trains, and we saw this, he trains with a whole pack of, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, because obviously his mentor, his pupil comes up, they can see it. So whoever joins his team can grow and build off that.
Sure.
But
And we're seeing it now in the UFC. They're taking over. There's a lot of Dagestanis from this gym. His cousin, Umar, he's coming in and he's taking over. He's actually
Bashara of Dagestani.
He is, but he's not part of the
Not part of the team. But another Dagestani who just won.
crazy. These Dagestanis are so good.
He also only has one eye, and he's winning. He's almost undefeated.
The only thing with Sharabutin is he cannot fight in the U.S.
Yeah.
He has one eye, so the United States Athletic Commission will not let him fight in the U.S. because he has one
They
eye.
think he's a harm to himself if he tries to fight. So
Because he can only, he has to fight out of the country. I want to say only in the Emirate.
yeah, he's only been fighting in the Saudi.
I want to say he's only able to fight in the
Yeah.
Emirate. Yeah.
But he's almost, is he undefeated or close to undefeated? I think he's like 13-1 or 12-1.
Good question.
He's close.
I would say he's undefeated.
yeah,
One
really
eye and
want
he's
to say now.
dominating.
Gary,
Could you
dude.
imagine? Oh my God.
Gary, dude.
Is that so? I don't know what he looks like, but it's like one eye completely like closed.
It's glazed. I
Glazed,
think you
okay.
can see some pigmentation change. I'm not sure if it just didn't develop or what. I'd have to look to see.
Yeah.
I can't remember why he only has.
I want to say
vision out of
I want
one
to
eye.
say he has 50% vision.
Oh, is that okay?
Or some, it's not like a replacement eye. He has some issue with it. But yeah, he's a scary dude.
Yeah.
He's scary dude.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's crazy. Corey, man, I learned so much. I don't have much experience with any martial arts growing up. I wish I did.
Yep.
Enough, I'm sure. I will get to Matt here and you'll take me down some. Yeah.
No.
But I know fueling the body, and I know we touched on this multiple times throughout this podcast. What are some tips in terms of a basic nutrition supplementation coming into the body? And what does that look like for you?
So for most people, especially in martial arts, Jiu Jitsu, you're going to have to fuel yourself, obviously, with good proteins, good carbs. I'll throw in good fats as well. Obviously, not as required as carb and protein, I would say, in my opinion. But because you're burning so many calories and you're rolling at a very high intense level, you're going to have to fuel yourself. So carbs are going to be very important. Protein, obviously, to keep your muscles famed or even build up new muscle is going to be super important for not only strength and power, but density as well, if you will, right? So you're a little bit harder to move, but quality and what types of carbs, what types of protein you're eating is going to be key as well. So let's say for a pre-workout snack, I always recommend some simple type of carbs like fruit or something like that, juice. And then post-workout, doing something like rice, potatoes, I'll say noodles. Complex carbs is what it comes down to, as long as you get a good source. A lot of red meat, really good. A lot of lean meats and a lot of really dense, complex carbohydrates are going to be really good for fueling your body and assisting with these hard rolls and strength training that you're going to be doing.
Are you a proponent of get enough protein, or do you shoot for even more of your body weight? Do you just want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, for me personally, I recommend most people to try to get a little bit more.
A little more.
You know, whatever it is right now that you're getting, try to get a little more. You can always use a little more protein. Yeah, I would say like 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilo body weight.
Yeah, so that's way higher than most recommend even.
Yeah,
Dang.
I would say, yeah.
But you're thinking of your training, so
But then again, if you train a lot, you're going to be hungry, and that's but then, vice versa. If you're trying to lose weight, I know a lot of people that have started martial arts that are in it for, I don't want to compete. I'm a parent. I just want to lose some weight, get in shade, have a social hour with some of my friends. Okay, that's cool. So getting the more nutrient dense foods like the steaks or red meats or the complex carbs, so you're able to refuel your body. You can even throw in some veggies.
Especially if you're starting out, you're going to be gassed.
Sure. You're going to be gassed, so you got to have that fuel in your day. So
were there some habits, tips, tricks that you used that maybe helped fuel you or even gave you more of an edge that you felt? I know, I can't remember if you talked on the honey or maple syrup or something. I thought you had talked on.
Yeah, both are good. Honey, maple syrup. One of the two I'm eating every day for breakfast.
You are? Okay.
Yeah, I put it in my yogurt or my kefir.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just good quality. And no matter what it is, what diet you choose or what foods you're going to eat, as long as it's good quality, you know where it's coming from. That's the biggest thing. That's it.
Beautiful. I know there's a lot of people outside of martial arts, just average day Joes, and we see this every single day in clinic, is breaking down those habits and understanding that a lot of the times our urges come from our mindset based on certain chemicals that are in food. This is why we have these cravings for sugars and stuff. But I guess what's your take on eating to perform versus eating to satisfy?
Yeah, so you need to perform. Obviously, having good carbs are going to be huge, right, for upping performance. If you just eat to satisfy, yeah, likely you're going to pack on some extra weight. You're going to overeat. You're going to basically just be feeling the cravings and hormones in your brain. They're telling you to eat all this junk food, whether it's high sodium food or high artificial sugar food. And we tend to see that often here. So eating to perform is, going back to what I said a minute ago, you're eating a lot of nutrient-dense foods that are going to optimize your performance in the gym, that are going to prevent excess weight gain or excess cravings or excess bloating or inflammation or any of that stuff. I think eating to perform, whether it's making your portions smaller or choosing more dense, nutrient-dense foods instead of having so much food on your plate, maybe a little bit less, but more nutrient-dense, good quality, grass-fed, organic. You know, it might be a little better raw dairy instead of your pasteurized dairy. So it's small little details or changes that people can implement to their daily life that could prevent them from overeating or eating just to satisfy in times of, let's say, boredom or, stuff like that. Yeah. Moving through.
Yeah. I know that this is something that you have studied in school and have implemented day to day in your life, as obviously you've trained and performed, and now you're in clinic and teaching others how to do this too. But I know that with a part of the nutrition, you're also training others how to lift properly and how to grow and how to become a better version of themselves. So I know coming up, you have some projects down the pipeline. You just want to talk on that a little bit. And then where can people find you if they have, I guess they want to hear more from your expertise?
Yeah, my Instagram is CoryB.fit, CoryB.fit. I post videos there on stretching, mobility tips, weightlifting hacks, if you will, nutrition tips, kind of anything health and fitness related pertaining to longevity and health can be found there. Got some stuff in the works coming up in terms of helping people outside of the clinic as well, in terms of mobility, stretching, personal training, all that good stuff, nutrition training, all that stuff combined into one or two little side quests that I'm starting up soon. So stay tuned for that.
I can't wait for that.
Yeah, I'm super excited for that. And thank you guys for the help.
I'm going to be a client, so
let's go.
I'll definitely go on.
I know personally, as we've talked prior to Doc, I and Cory in the mix as well. Cory's actually, he's very modest, very humble, but he knows how to train the body in a way that's helps not only one recover from injuries, but to optimize the performance way better than most people. And whenever I look to assess any trainers, I look for specific things of how the body processes work, and he has all that knowledge. Thank God we have him in our midst and with our team right now. But yeah, that's something that I think is very important. So by all means, please reach out to him if you have questions, concerns about anything training-wise, anything like that. So I think he's a valuable resource that for most people that absolutely need.
I agree 100%.
Is there anything else that you want to touch on, leave the world?
Thanks for the kind words, Cory. It's been an honor working for you guys. You guys are like mentors to me. So being here, doing this is super cool. And I've never done something like this before. So
we appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. And yeah, stay tuned for some of the big projects we got coming up. So
absolutely. Beautiful. We appreciate every single one of you guys watching today. Thank you so much for the continued support. We just hope you guys get value out of what we share. And we're excited to continue bringing each and every day more content to you guys. So just let us know how we're doing, anything else you guys want to hear about or add to. So thank you guys so much. Until next time, Doc. See you guys later. Have a good day.
Disclaimer, the content provided in this health podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or 911 immediately. Reliance on any information provided in this podcast is solely at your own risk. The creators and hosts of this podcast are not responsible for any actions or decisions you may take based on the information presented.
Thanks for joining us on The Functional Code. For more evidence-based health insights, subscribe, rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. Remember, your journey to a healthier you begins with understanding the Functional Code. Until next time, stay well stay informed, and embrace the science of living well.